social and environmental benefits of recycling, but is it economical? Because as a businessman, you're not into this thing only for the love of it. Although you say it's a labor of love. You have to make money. You have staff to pay.
Sure.
You have your family to take care of.
Yeah.
Is it economical?
I hesitate, but in the long run, it can be. My company, Jamaica Recycles, now is maybe, well, along with Recycle Partners, which is, a public-private partnership that we work very closely with. Basically, there may be about one and two other very small organizations out there, are the ones that are basically, doing something in terms of recycling. But in terms of profitability, in the long run, it is, because it is a volume-driven business. Okay. But what you find happening is over the years, there have been many companies that have come on and basically have disappeared. And it's really because recycling markets, the global markets, are risky markets. They fluctuate significantly over the years. So right now, plastics are at an all-time low, right? Say it might be about 6 cents when normally it is at 20 cents, 20 odd cents. That's how significant it can fall.
And that's
per pound, say 6 US cents, say, per pound. That is how significant it can fall. Now, can you understand being in business where that happens? So it is so risky that you don't find many persons getting into it. And when you do get into it, it's also a capital-intensive operation. So we invest, yes, tens of millions of dollars in equipment. Because what the equipment does, whether it be to collect it from the North Coast or to process it locally in Kingston, it reduces the significant costs of transportation. Can you imagine moving 2,000 pounds of plastic bottles from, say, St. Thomas to Kingston in a truck which is loose? No, you have to find a machine that is going to cost about $2 million that has to compress it. No, that is capital you're talking about. Can you imagine having to put, scores of these machines all at strategic points to ensure that you can be that your operation can be sustainable, right? So that is really, so it can be quite costly. And when those markets fall, you have nothing to stand on. So you have persons get in, and when the markets is out, they disappear.
So looking at it though, what causes these swings in markets like these?
Demand and supply. I mean, recently, even with the situation that would have occurred in terms of the war between with Russia and so on, generally, once economies, and there was quite some, well, I wouldn't say recession, but obviously there was fall off in terms of global markets and so on, and that makes a difference. So what you find happening is that prices, again, demand and supply prices end up falling. And sometimes it's really about, maybe there's an oversupply of a certain amount of material. And again, too, it also follows the whole concept of plastic bottles being reused as opposed to plastic bottles now being generated from scratch, as it were. Right, so there is a dynamics with that, and so the cost of oil, right? So what you find is that if oil prices start kicking up and going very high, then you find persons are going to be looking for recyclable material now to recycle, because then so you'll get a better demand for it. Okay. So you find that also there is the dynamics there in terms of...
When I look at recycling though, so there are different, we speak generally, but there are different grades or different types of material that's recycled. So you spoke to paper, for example, we spoke to plastic, but there are other things. So scrap metal, would that come?
Yeah, scrap metal is there. That's recycling. Yes, we don't, that you need special license for those now. We don't do that. The closest we come to that would be like aluminum beverage containers, right? Although you speak about paper, again, we do maybe over 10 different grades of paper. right? So you're talking about tissue. We have several tissue companies in Jamaica. We have several box companies in Jamaica that actually produce boxes, but they have cut-ins and waste significantly, some of them significant waste. But those are value items. And that is where, as I said, that's why we focus on these large organizations that generate a lot of. And there are also companies that basically just bring material in and they may repackage them and so on. So you find that you can generate get quite a bit of material through those.
Is there any possibility? Well, first of all, most of what we do now, we have to export, have to send back out, right?
Oh yeah, essentially it's all for export. All for export. So our business is all for export.
Is there any possibility of, let's take plastic bottles, which are much more prevalent. Is there any possibility of, yes, we collect them and we do the whatever, processing,
yeah, and then we export to mills abroad.
But is there a possibility for us to get everything done locally rather than export?
I knew you were going there, Niels. It is a possibility. However, again, you will be, whatever you're going to do, it always has to be competitive, and you are not competing locally, right? So if I were to move to the next stage of pelletizing, or even making what they call preforms, so that is basically stepping up the value chain, I still have to compete with the material coming from across the globe because we have an open market. So I would need to be efficient. I would need to have the economies of scale.
And that's the one, right?
And that is where we are not. That is what we don't have. So it can be done.
So
yeah.
it's still small.
Well, we generate over right now about 800. The last count was close to about 900 million bottles. Right, that is it per year, right? And we are just scratching the surface now in terms of maybe about 30% thereabouts as it relates to recovery and export. So the potential is there to get that done, but again, until you reach the economies of scale and be competitive, and that is all about the volumes and being competitive and having the machinery. If you go the next step, it may be a labor of love because you may not be able to sell it and compete with an importing product, similar importing product.
Looking again, though, at a lot of what we do as business, again, when we look at economies of scale and because of our size as a country, what about the possibility of us, let's take Jamaica Recycles, doing this across the region, and is there a scope? You take on the recycling across the region, would that generate much more, and would it be worth it?
Yes, it would, but I believe that I think would ideally want to dance a yard before we dance abroad. So it was important that at least we get it right here first. I mean, we have, as I said, so much plastic bottles here now that yes, we can move up the value chain quite easily if we are able to get a system in place, a sustainable one, right, that would ensure that we have that feedstock volumes coming in. Then now we would be able to step. So it's about stages. Then now we'll be able to step to the next level. Okay, we need a new plant, we need new equipment because we are now going into that next stage of the processing to upgrade, as I said, to step up the value chain. So it is possible. I would not, yeah, there is recycling being done in some of those other islands, but if we are unable to get it done right here, then stepping outside what should be our comfort zone somewhere else, I think that would be the wrong.
Are we missing out on something? Because when I spoke to you initially, you did say the vast majority of your business, as it is now, Jamaica Recycle, the vast majority of the business you generate is in paper. But yet, a lot of what is generated, well, maybe residential, even more so than commercial, is plastic. Why that disparity? Why are we not seeing things turn around the other?
Okay. Again, from a business standpoint and how Jamaica Recycle started, we basically would have focused on the low-hanging fruits first, right? So it's much easier, less costs, larger volumes, that's it. Now we have, yes, and we have essentially covered, not fully, but, you know, there. Now, the next step would be to look at, you know, other material and where we can get it. Now, one of the most costly items to recover is plastic bottles because it is now mostly post-consumer rather than post-industrial that we have before. Now, when it is post-consumer, consumers are spread far and wide, but the volumes are there, and that is what makes it that it is possible that it can be done. Right? So that is really why we have that disparity now. So as a company, what you want to do is, which is what we did, our strategy was to aggressively go after the lower hanging fruits. We still have a lot to do with supermarkets to come on board in terms of, you know, their generation of we don't have as many supermarkets as we should on board, wholesales and so on. But sometimes it's really just to put in the right system in place there. Now it's even more difficult now to get to households.
And this is your government policy.
Right. Oh, significantly so, Nielsen. We believe that one of our approach now and our strategy going forward is going to be to establish the linkages and to get the support of government as it relates to establishing a sustainable, not only that, as it relates to growing the sector and putting in a more sustainable system that will benefit overall, not just recycling as a sector, but the environment and by extension, the economy. Because we are talking about being able to export